could you share a word about the branding and marketing strategies you chose for your brand? And how did you adapt your strategies to overcome the challenges posed by the pandemic?
One of the first things that would sort of occur to you when you hear the word postcard and you try and connect it to the category that we're in is it's not a very literal kind of name, right? It's not ABC snacks, it's not XYZ kind of namkeen kind of name, right? And that the reason behind it, and this is something I suppose our learning and our training in college also sets you up for this, is that your brand has to communicate something far more than what's literal about it. What is it that your brand communicates to anybody hearing? What is the emotion that it's driving? Your brand and your brand personality has to be a reflection of that. It is not the idea is not to be simplistic, because then you're limited in a category and you're defined in a certain way. But the idea is to sort of appeal to your emotion. So when we think about postcard, the reason it comes back to my first point about the whole concept of travel and the love for food, right? When you think about any sort of place that you go to, you're always bringing back something from there. That postcard is a memento, it's a souvenir of that place. And that's what our product stands for, right? It's about discovering different places across India. And each postcard is that representation of that place. So that's where the name came from. From a marketing strategy point of view, I think our learning over time has taught us that for a category where a customer need not know the product upfront, it's important to sort of focus on content marketing, whether it is digital or offline marketing, whichever sort of channel you choose. The focus is all about content, and that's why when you look at our Facebook and our Instagram pages and you look at our digital marketing that we do, we're trying to share as much content as possible, because that's what people want to know. um, the way we look at our marketing is that whatever we put out, whether it's a flyer, a poster, or anything, either it should give you information because that's something you want to read and you want to know about, or it should entertain you. There are only two things why you follow anybody on Instagram or on Facebook today, or you like some content, right? That's the only two reasons out there. So either I'm entertaining you, or I'm informing you. I'll give you one simple example. It's Christmas time, and we just recently launched a plum cake, okay, from Kerala. And instead of telling people that here is a plum cake and we put dry fruits and we put different sort of ingredients into it, uh, what we went out with the story was that, do you know where India's first plum cake was created? Do you know where it was crafted? Do you know the history? Do you know the story behind it? And that element of telling you something beyond what you know, or something that's not literal, helps helps drive curiosity about the product, and your conversion is an outcome of that curiosity. So that's what we've seen work for us, and that's what we focus on in terms of a marketing strategy. The truth is that COVID, of course, has upturned the world for everybody. You guys would have been in college if not for physically in college, if not for the pandemic. Um, the thing is that for us, because we're in the food space, the pandemic had a unexpected but side positive impact, because what's happened in the course of the pandemic is that Indians are spending a lot more time at home. We've got a lot more disposable time because we're not traveling to places. We're also working from home. And all of this has given rise to a larger consumption than was normal. So it's actually driven the categories of food in a positive way, since this pandemic. The only thing that's changed is, where is the consumption happening? Earlier, it was very normal for you to walk into a store and to buy certain products. But now you don't do that. A larger part of India is shopping online. So the channel of consumption has changed, or channel of sale has changed from offline retail stores, the traditional distribution model, to a larger base of e commerce. And that's where we've seen our business also shift.
Being an entrepreneur comes with its own challenges, and even the mindset required is one different from a corporate lifestyle. So, how did your experiences prepare you for the entrepreneurial journey?
What you said is very, very true. And the company that I got placed into from IIFT itself was Axis Bank. And this was Axis Bank back in 2008. Back in those days, work in the bank was very entrepreneurial, where you were essentially the center who was trying to manage different aspects of work, even though it was banking work, but you were managing a project. And that project management was an end-to-end task. So whether it was dealing with legal or compliance or finance or marketing or product or service, you were sort of the fulcrum of it as a product manager. That experience really helped me because the the similarity is this: as an entrepreneur, you're not siloed. You don't work, this is not my workstation and this is not the only work I do. I'm responsible for everything in the company. If tomorrow somebody doesn't like the look of a product, if somebody doesn't like my marketing, if somebody doesn't like the service that's happening in my company, at the end of the day, the buck stops here, right? So that's the skill set that you have to sort of put out, and that comes by virtue of what you do before, which is sort of managing work, irrespective of what your functional role is, but looking at whatever you do from a project management perspective, saying that I'm the owner of this piece of work end to end. That attitude sort of helps in sort of in your future endeavors as well.
Tell us a little about your time at IIFT. What are some memories you fondly look back to?
The IFT phase was a very interesting experience for me. It's something that I cherish, but for a lot of different reasons. I think for me personally, at a personal level, um, I sort of came in from Bangalore to Delhi. There is a sort of a cultural shift in that itself, for one, and I had never sort of lived in a hostel before. So my biggest learning and my biggest experience was hostel life in its entirety in that IFT journey, right? And that's something that I think has really helped me in whatever I've done, because it just teaches you to adapt. It teaches you to sort of go with the flow. You're sort of forced to mingle with people whom otherwise, if you're in your room, you would not do so. So those are things that really helped in that sense. So I have good memories of of hostel life at IFT. I also sort of have very good memories of life in Delhi. Delhi around IFT. Sort of I had a good set of friends, and we always used to explore Delhi in many ways. So I think those are two things that I particularly enjoyed. In terms of classes, I can tell you what I definitely liked was the marketing classes back then. I think the foundations of marketing were sort of laid at that point of time. I don't particularly remember too much about economics or anything else, so I sort of liked that one class and I went down that road. But yeah, I think all said and done, the foundations of whatever we are today is has been set in those 2 years at IFT. So deeply grateful for that.
What, according to you, are some of the most important skills an MBA student should work on so that they can take up entrepreneurship as a career?
Entrepreneurship isn't something that it's not essentially like a skill that you can imbibe in a sense, some way. But what does happen is there are certain building blocks that help, and it's your choice to sort of focus on those blocks versus certain others, which will eventually help. And I speak this not from experience of doing it the right way. I actually speak it from the experience of not having done it enough personally. One of the things that I believe help the most is networking and sort of maintaining contacts and relationships with as wide a variety of people across batches up and down that you can do. Because one of the things you realize as an entrepreneur is that it's those contacts and those networks that you have that ultimately help you the most. A lot of knowledge can be gained. You can hire people to do certain skill sets and certain jobs, but what you can't sort of substitute is the quality of the network that you build. And when we're in college, we have enough distractions, or we have studies also to go at, all of that in place. But what we don't focus on enough is on literally widening the scope of people that you interact with in college, in your batch, the batch above you, and the batch below you. That's something that I didn't do enough of, and I definitely feel the gap, in my entrepreneurial life. So I think that's something that is sort of it's a very conscious habit to do that, right? Because you'll have a lot of different people that you'll meet. The trick is in trying to find what is common between you and them to have a conversation, and there will always be something common between any two people out there. But it takes an effort. It takes an effort to get out of your comfort zone, to strike up a conversation with somebody whom you otherwise may not want to, or you won't have the time to have that kind of conversation with them. But that I think is one thing that anybody at an MBA level who's looking to do their own business later on should definitely sort of get into. I think beyond that, the only other thing is that look at sort of trying to be the person who sort of leads or manages projects, right? Because that's a skill set where that's sort of a task where you have to deal with a lot of people. You have to deal with people. You have to deal with understanding what drives them, what motivates them, how do you coordinate between them, and that's a skill set that definitely comes into handy. Because as an entrepreneur, it's very rare that you will drive your own agenda. You are always sort of marrying different. You're trying to bring out the best between the people you work with. So those are two things that I would probably sort of point out.
What piece of advice would you give to the students for achieving their goals and leaving an impact in the greater sense?
That's a heavy question. I don't think I'm even vaguely qualified to be doling out advice on something of that sort. At some point, you understand what motivates you and what you feel you're good at doing, because it comes from within, that this is a kind of work or this is an area of work where you have your own passion. It's something that everybody will sort of put out there, right? Saying that follow your passions. It's a really popular headline to put out. But if you internalize it within yourself and you just ask yourself, saying that do you like what you're doing, and if you like what you're doing, you will do a really good job at it. So I would only suggest that particularly at an MBA level, there are lots of options out there, lots and lots of options that you have the choice to get into different kinds of companies. In today's world, you've got the choice of getting into so many startups which didn't exist back in 2008, right? And my suggestion would be to exercise that choice sort of very consciously based on what you see as an area where you are passionate to work in. It could be a bank, it could be a startup, it could be in anything. It doesn't matter what it is. But if it's something that drives you personally, do that. I would only say that I've seen placements. I've been there when enough people have been placed, and myself and whatever. Um, Going with the flow and sort of just going, as part of a group of people because this is something that needs to happen is okay for those days, but eventually it sort of comes back to you, and you'll probably sort of backtrack and take different steps. So I would suggest that sort of be more open to different avenues upfront, be conscious, and just literally go with what you feel and your gut instinct says this is something that I'd like to do, and therefore go ahead and do that. Don't be driven by what the mob's doing somewhere.